listen,
be the
listen.
lawyer.
We have a dead baby in room 206. Okay, you were the last person with Trinity.
What happens when you invite a sadistic monster you barely know into your child's life? This is a question I hope you never have to answer yourself, but it's one that we will be looking at in today's video. This horrific case takes us to an awful living arrangement that resulted in the heartbreaking death of an innocent 2-year-old. Her injuries are one of the most gut-wrenching that we've covered in any case so far, leaving us wondering, what kind of human could do this to a child? Let's take a closer look at how and why this happened. Gwinnett County, Georgia. Located in the north-central portion of the U.S. state, this county has almost 1 million residents and is the most ethnically diverse place in Georgia. With highly rated public schools, restaurants, and parks, this is a beautiful place to settle down and start a family. Trinity Maria Kiles was born on April 9, 2019, to Rosie Kiles in Savannah, Georgia. From the outset, Trinity was instantly loved by everyone who knew her. Her bright brown eyes and her sweet smile could light up the darkest of days. Her mother lovingly nicknamed her Trin Trin, and she was proud of her adventurous spirit as Trinity showed early signs of leadership and independence. According to her mother, the couch was her playground. She thought it was the funniest thing to jump off the couch and run around barefoot. She was the happiest when dancing to her favorite song, Usher's ABC Song by Sesame Street. The 2-year-old loved watching that show and PJ Masks. She also loved playing on her labeled tablet and thought it was hilarious to hang up on video calls from her grandparents and other loved ones. It's something her family claims she got a kick out of. Trinity was just a baby, but she was already showing signs of a big personality and a wicked sense of humor. As much as Rosie wished to spend more time with her daughter, she was a single working mother doing her best to provide Trinity with a good life. In 2021, she met Malik Kyrie Kennedy online. He was a 24-year-old man from Duluth, and feeling some connection with him, they started dating and living together. It's important to note, though, that Kennedy is someone Rosie hadn't known for very long. She didn't know him well enough to understand his temperament or how he behaved when she wasn't around him. At that point, Kennedy would put on a front to make sure she would overlook his anger issues, but even this mask would occasionally slip.
Anything can agitate me. Anything.
Rosie would work hard to provide for her little family. She'd frequently leave her boyfriend with Trinity at the Quality Inn Hotel, where the three had been living. They had to live there because they had recently been evicted from their apartment. Finances were tight, but Rosie tried to hold it all together. She knew that her boyfriend was feeling frustrated with taking care of the little girl. After all, Trinity was at an age that required a lot of patience and maturity to deal with. A 2-year-old loves testing boundaries, which is considered a normal part of their development. As any parent would know, throwing tantrums, hitting, biting, screaming, and many other unpleasant behaviors are normal for a toddler who is just starting to understand the world. Taking this into account, Rosie was working extra hard to put Trinity in daycare, where her needs will be better met, and Kennedy, who she knew was unaccustomed to children, would no longer have to babysit her almost 5 days of the week. Unfortunately, this was a goal Rosie was never able to fulfill. On May 2nd, 2021, just 1 month after Trinity turned 2, Rosie arrived to something horrible in her hotel room. At first, everything seemed normal. Little Trinity was lying on her back in the bed, looking like she was taking an afternoon nap. Rosie freshened up after a long day of work and noticed Kennedy's exasperated expression, so she discussed plans to enroll Trinity in a daycare as soon as possible. Halfway through the conversation, she checked in on Trinity, only to realize, to her horror, Trinity wasn't sleeping, she was unconscious. Rosie tried to get her baby to respond, but the normally energetic Trinity felt lifeless. Shocked and panicked, Rosie quickly dialed 911 without wasting a second. While she was on the phone with the dispatcher, an officer quickly arrived at the hotel inn, where the toddler was still unconscious. He opened the door to see Rosie and Kennedy arguing. The mother was clearly distraught as she pleaded with her boyfriend for answers.
Yes, my baby. Oh my God, baby. Tell him what happened.
Okay,
I
so
don't care.
basically, I ended up giving her melatonin to like go to sleep.
No, babe. What did you do?
I gave her melatonin so she could go to sleep. I didn't think she would like freaking do all that.
No, but I don't know. I just got home from work and she broke up. Oh,
Ma'am.
yes. Please help me. I'm about to have a heart attack. I just got back home.
But Kennedy insisted that all he did was give Trinity a melatonin to put her to sleep. Rosie had recently started to give her child a small drop of melatonin to make her nap after she had been up all day. But now, she was anxious that Kennedy probably gave her too much and Trinity might have had a reaction. But as we'll soon see, the actual truth is much worse than this. Rosie was beginning to get suspicious of Kennedy's melatonin story because she noticed a big bruise on the side of Trinity's face, but he kept giving her evasive answers about the injury. The officer desperately gave the child CPR, but the argument between the couple started escalating.
I need
I'm going to tell you everything, I swear.
And remove her pads. Medical replacement.
Shortly after, the paramedics arrived and they worked for several minutes, while Rosie and her boyfriend were questioned outside by the officers.
That's your child?
Yes, that's
Your
my
child?
child. That's my child.
What about him? Is it the dad? Not the dad? Did you leave the baby with him and you went out, or what?
I was at work.
Okay.
And I just got back to work.
Okay.
Kennedy insisted that the bruising on the child's face was from him pinching her cheeks, but Rosie was skeptical and knew that he must have hit her baby on the face. She had always been firmly against corporal punishment of any kind against her child, who was too young to understand inappropriate behavior. Nevertheless, the officer kept her separate from Kennedy. For 90 minutes, Rosie anxiously waited in the police car outside her hotel as she saw more and more police cruisers arrive at the scene. Understandably, she was agitated and frightened. Up until now, she had hoped that her daughter would be okay soon and they'll reunite, but the more cops she saw, the more her heart sank. Reality was starting to set in.
I just need somebody to talk to.
I know, they're about to come talk to you. You gotta stay in the car. I know you're frustrated. You gotta stay in the car and we're gonna come talk to you in a minute, okay? You gotta, listen. Listen, I don't know anything, so you gotta stay in the car and wait for one of them.
Why are they here? Why are they here?
Put your leg in the car.
Why are they here? I need to know something. They're not
Calls
saying
like this,
anything.
everyone comes out. Calls like this, everyone comes out, okay? Just put your leg in the car and have a seat,
Oh my
okay?
gosh.
All right?
They need to tell me something. I just need to talk to something.
All right, they're gonna come talk to you in a minute, okay? All right. Yeah, they're coming down in a minute, okay?
They keep saying a minute.
Her gut told her that this medical emergency had turned into a crime scene. Despite every attempt made by the paramedics, they failed to revive Trinity. The toddler was pronounced dead at the scene. Kennedy was taken to a police station for questioning, and as the security cam footage shows, he was nervous throughout the investigation. After being questioned about how frequently he had to babysit Trinity, it was obvious that Kennedy had taken on way more responsibility for the child's well-being than he should have. Fidgeting with his hands, he explained that Trinity wouldn't be disciplined by her mother, and she wouldn't let him discipline her either. But that didn't stop him. He would occasionally punish her for misbehaving by spanking, taking away her treats, or making her stand in the corner when Rosie was away. On that fateful day, the boyfriend said that the toddler was flipping out, screaming, knocking things over, spilling her juice, doing what a typical 2-year-old does every day. It was all behavior that Kennedy acknowledges he knows is normal.
Just normal kid stuff, really. But terrible too, I guess, as they say. She was saying.
But that didn't stop his irritation with her. He confessed to giving the child half a dropper's worth of melatonin, despite the bottle recommending a very tiny dose for ages 3 and up.
Like a drop, it's a drop. Just
So how much did you give her today?
pretty good amount. Like, it was about halfway, almost. Not really at the top level.
Doing that to a 2-year-old is extremely dangerous. Excess melatonin can cause seizures, vomiting, dizziness, and increased agitation in toddlers. In short, instead of putting her to sleep, he was too ignorant to realize he had created a medical emergency, and Trinity was obviously too young to articulate why she was in pain. Halfway through the investigation, the 24-year-old admitted to popping the little girl, but he was super vague about what that meant exactly.
There was no correction, really. It was simple as just the normal, just, like I said, popper, or grip rub.
You do what? Sorry,
Grip rub, really, that's it.
Alarmed by this, the officers push him to understand why the baby's face had a bruise, to which Kennedy confessed that he pinched her hard on the left side of her face, leaving bruises and fingernail marks.
I did that on her cheek, though.
On her cheek? Which side? Left side?
This was a new detail, and the officers maintained their pressure to get more info out of the suspect. They brought up the text messages Kennedy had sent Rosie over the course of their relationship, where he is clearly annoyed and venting to her about the baby's frustrating behavior.
I actually texted her not too long ago. It was before this, I texted her. Yeah, I was meant to her, but normally I don't text her. Or if I do, I'll either I text her or I talk to her.
They then moved on to discussing other injuries on Trinity's head, which Kennedy admitted was because her head hit the headboard when he put her back in bed. This incident took place right after her mother left the hotel room and headed to work.
There's some other markings to the baby's face.
Yeah, she hit her head earlier today, and that was also my fault, because, my mom seen it, when she walked out, and, I had put her on the bed, her head hit the headboard.
Your mumbling, can you
Her head hit the headboard, basically.
So, when did that happen?
That was right before she left, right before she left.
Who left?
Rose.
Sadly, the injuries on her face weren't the only ones inflicted on her fragile body. There were many others that the young man admitted were from past beatings.
It's not my first time, I'd be pinch her or something, so, but that would be my way of, she'll tell me, you gotta find a way to, work it out or whatever it is, and I just, I'm trying to figure out, how to handle it or whatever, and that's the way I end up going about it, pinch her.
While corporal punishment is legal in all 50 states, even on a child as young as Trinity was, it crosses the line into child abuse when, according to the laws of Georgia, it leads to physical injury or death inflicted upon a child by a parent or other person responsible for the care of the child by other than accidental means. It's clear that Kennedy was, throughout the investigation, doing his best to downplay the extent of the severe abuse and beatings he subjected the little girl to almost daily. Alongside the head injury, the baby had multiple cuts on her lips, which Kennedy explained as the toddler biting her lips. The officers were understandably skeptical.
Okay, what about, was it a cut on the lip?
Yeah, there's multiple.
No, she barely did.
No,
Well,
that wasn't a bite mark.
Well, regardless of, you're gonna tell me something, but I'm just gonna go in my side, so she bumped her head.
What about the lip, though?
And up in the lip, she bite.
Kennedy did his best to frame all her injuries as accidental, but no matter how hard he insisted, it's obvious that there's more to the story than he was willing to share.
Now, how did it happen?
Probably when I made her head on the headboard.
You made her head on the headboard?
Not I did it, I just did it, and that's the problem, and that's what's even making me go to, it's the fact that, when I did that and everything, it wasn't intentional, it's not on purpose, it's not.
Luckily, the officers already had a vague idea of what had happened. All they needed was for Kennedy to confess and cooperate to make this case clearer. Upon investigating the crime scene, they found bloody towels in the bathroom trash can. This is the point at which Kennedy finally realized that his lies had caught up with him.
So why are there bloody towels in the trash can? Tell me about
From
that.
her lip.
From
her lip. Her lip was bleeding.
And how did her lip get How did her lips start bleeding?
From her, I assume. Most part, I assume it was from her.
Since Kennedy was barely making sense during the interrogation, and his explanations were terrible.
You're not describing, like, you're not doing a very good job explaining it, so.
I'm not pretty good at that at all, really, when it comes to things.
Okay, take a deep breath, relax.
One of the officers brought in a baby doll to get a clearer idea of how the child was harmed.
Do me a favor and show me how you grabbed her. Like how you tossed her against the headboard.
But Kennedy refused to cooperate in any way or show what he actually did to cause Trinity's death. Aside from confessing to the melatonin, he continued to refuse explaining his actions toward the toddler. The interrogation had hit a brick wall. Kennedy never confessed to his crime, but the truth eventually came out about what he had done to the baby. An autopsy determined the child suffered an injury to the back of her head. She had several bruises on the cheeks with finger and fingernail impressions, a swollen eye, swollen forehead, and bruises on the body. This prompted the county coroner to rule Trinity's death as a homicide. The day of Trinity's death, Kennedy was trying to play video games while the baby was repeatedly screaming and not quieting down. Frustrated into an uncontrollable rage, Kennedy slammed the toddler's head repeatedly against the headboard of the hotel's bed until she became unconscious. When she woke up 2 hours later, his rage still hadn't gone away. He violently shook her until she passed out again. This action can cause shaken baby syndrome, and in cases like this, it is lethal. It may only take 1 or 2 hard shakes to seriously injure a small child. This is because babies and toddlers have relatively big, heavy heads and weak neck muscles. When a toddler is shaken, the brain bounces back and forth against the skull. This can cause bruising of the brain, swelling, pressure, and bleeding in the brain. Some babies may even stop breathing, which can cause further brain damage. If the baby survives, it can cause blindness and other permanent disabilities. Abusive head trauma is the #1 cause of child abuse deaths in kids under the age of 5 in the United States. In Trinity's case, she immediately went into a seizure after being shaken so violently. Instead of panicking, Kennedy simply watched her suffer and wiped the blood off of her mouth with the towels, which were later found as evidence. While the girl was lying in the room, officials say Kennedy never tried to call her mother or seek any emergency medical aid. Instead, officials say he drank alcohol, smoked, played video games, and went on social media. During the interrogation, it seems that Kennedy tried to excuse away his actions by claiming, "I guess I don't know my own strength," and lying that he had no idea how he hurt her.
I understand, you've been tasked out with this responsibility that you probably don't want nothing to do with. Because how old are you? 24?
24.
Okay, you don't have any kids yourself. So why should you have to be watching this child when it's not even your responsibility, right?
I don't want you to put it like that, though.
Okay, but it's been a lot to you. It's been hard on you, let's just put it that way, right?
Right.
Okay, you're 24 years old, you're trying to support your girlfriend, and now you gotta support a child, and you're working full time, and now when she's working, you have to watch the child, and then you probably have to get ready for work, right? Were you supposed to work today?
Yeah.
And it blew up today.
It's a lot.
It is a lot. You're young, man, I understand. You got agitated. You're trying to play your game, she's running around screaming her head off. You're probably worried about that it's bothering the next door neighbors. But listen, man, you need to be honest with me and tell me what happened in that room, okay? Because a bottle of melatonin isn't going to hurt a baby.
Maybe it's because I was just too aggressive.
Okay. Just take a deep breath. How are you too aggressive?
Like, I don't know my own strength. I don't know, maybe I hurt her.
It took 3 years, but Kennedy finally faced justice for this awful crime. Now, 27 years old, he was convicted of malice murder, 2 counts of felony murder, aggravated battery, and first-degree cruelty to children for the death of 2-year-old Trinity Kiles. The verdict occurred on the 3-year anniversary of the incident, and Kiles would have turned 5 that April. After the jury returned with their guilty verdict, a judge sentenced Kennedy to life in prison without the possibility of parole. The county's district attorney, Patsy Austin Gaston, said they continue to grieve with the family for this loss and hope the verdict can bring some closure. We continue to grieve with Trinity's family for this senseless loss. Although this verdict and sentencing cannot replace this little girl's future or quell her family's pain, our hope is that it brings them justice and provides them with some solace. Kennedy's conviction, while it brings a measure of closure, has left a community grappling with the heartbreak of a young life lost far too early. According to her obituary, Trinity was a little diva. She loved getting her hair done and admiring her beauty in the mirror, and it truly made her smile. She often wanted to strut her stuff at the park, take selfies with her mommy and her Roy, her bonus dad, and pose for the camera showing her baby doll and pony how to do it. Like any child her age, Trinity had a taste for the sweeter things in life. A bowl of oatmeal for breakfast, along with a strawberry Pop-Tart, was her go-to. She might have been little, but according to her mother, her appetite was mighty. The obituary goes on to state that, in her short time on this side of God's creation, she exemplified love, laughter, bravery, and joy in its purest form. She touched the lives of so many, a beloved daughter, granddaughter, niece, and cousin. Trinity was a shining, happy girl, the light of her family and the star of the hearts around her. She was joy personified. According to the 2016 U.S. Census, nearly 25% of children in America live with a single parent, usually their mother. Most divorced adults eventually cohabitate or remarry again. For example, around 75% of divorced women remarry within 10 years post-divorce. Yet, the number is lower if the woman is a mother of a minor child. Perhaps one of the reasons why relates to the documented risk involved in bringing an unrelated adult male into the home. Sometimes referred to as the abusive boyfriend syndrome, scholars note there is a statistically greater potential for instability in homes where adults and children who have no biological connection reside. It comes down to the fact they don't have a relationship established with these kids, states Eliana Gill, clinical director for the National Abuse Prevention Group Child Help. Their primary interest is really the adult partner, and they may find themselves more irritated when there's a problem with the children. As we saw in today's case, Kennedy had been irritated with Trinity since he first saw her. Of course, not all step-parents or bonus parents, male or female, struggle to bond or love the children of their new partners. There are certainly many stories of blended families thriving. But a study published in the Journal of Ethology and Sociobiology has made us aware of the risks. If their parents find new partners, children are 40 times more likely than those who live with biological parents to be sexually or physically abused. According to a Missouri-based study of children living in homes with unrelated adults, children are nearly 50 times as likely to die of inflicted injuries as children living with two biological parents. These are worrying statistics, both disturbing and scary. But how can we mitigate these serious risks? According to Dr. Laura Markham, author of Peaceful Parent, Happy Kids, she suggests delaying dating. Your priority is your child's emotional health, and that means not subjecting your child to a new partner or a series of partners. When you develop a relationship, don't be in a hurry to introduce your new flame to your child. Your kids have already lost their family, Markham says. They need time to get used to the idea of a step-parent. It won't help them to get close to a potential step-parent only to lose them. And finally, Dr. Markham suggests that a new partner should never discipline your children. Think of them as an aunt or uncle, not a parent. They should never be an authority figure in relation to your child, Markham says. There is just too much opportunity for abuse of power. I know so many situations where mothers let their new husband discipline a child only to end up terribly regretful afterwards. It is unfortunate that Trinity Kyle's bright young life turned into a cautionary tale about not trusting your most precious asset, your children, with people you barely know. On this point, everyone can agree. Trinity deserved a much better life than the one she got. What did you think of this case? Is a life sentence without the possibility of parole an appropriate punishment for Kennedy? Share your thoughts in the comments below.
Sometimes those closest to us are the ones we know the least. What began as a fairy tale romance suddenly ended as a cold-blooded murder that shook an entire nation. Just 3 weeks after her dream wedding, a beautiful bride lost her life in the most tragic way possible. But there was more to her murder than meets the eye. In today's case, we'll be looking at a double life and deceit that ran so deep, it led to a gut-wrenching betrayal nobody could have seen coming. Let's get started. Annie Nina Hindocha was a bright, outgoing, and beautiful 28-year-old woman. She was born in Sweden to parents Vinod and Nilam, who were of Ugandan Indian descent. While in their early 20s, the couple fled Uganda as South Asians were being expelled from the country by the notorious dictator Idi Amin in the 70s. The family left behind everything they owned, arriving in Europe with just 55 British pounds to their name. The Hindochas settled in Mariestad, Sweden, where Annie grew up with her siblings, Ami and Anish. Undeterred by the challenges he faced, Annie's father, Vinod, established a successful engineering business in Sweden and provided a comfortable and luxurious life for his family. Described as intelligent, ambitious, and confident, Annie was doted on by her father. After completing university, Annie moved to Stockholm to work in marketing for Ericsson, the mobile phone manufacturer. As she entered her mid-20s, Annie began to consider marriage and starting a family, inspired by her love for her sister's children. During her frequent trips to London for shopping and socializing, Annie was introduced to Shrien, a 30-year-old businessman from Bristol. Shrien Dewani, as he was known, had already achieved millionaire status through his family's nursing home business. The introduction was arranged by Annie's aunt, who believed they would be a good match. Everyone approved of his clean-cut good looks, his wealth, and his pedigree. At first, Annie was not immediately interested in Dewani, but she warmed to him after their second date. Dewani had previously been engaged to Rani Kansagra, the daughter of the multimillionaire founder of the Indian budget airline SpiceJet, but Dewani called the wedding off due to family disagreements. This did not raise any alarms for the Hindochas. Vinod asked his future son-in-law, "I don't want to know about your background. I just want to know, do you love my Annie? I am happy with that. All I want is for you two to be happy." To this, Dewani responded with an enthusiastic, "Yes." All of this felt like the start of a very happy story to everyone involved. Opinions about Dewani varied. Some found him arrogant and a bit of a show-off, while others described him as kind and generous. Annie appreciated his sense of humor and the feeling of protection he provided. As their long-distance relationship progressed, the couple faced challenges. Both strong-willed individuals, they often argued, likely because of the long distance between them. At one point, Annie ended the relationship, but they eventually reconciled. Annie even left her job in Stockholm and moved to an apartment in Luton as she was eager to have a closer relationship with her future husband. When Annie's parents met Dewani's family, Vinod felt somewhat intimidated by their wealth, but found them welcoming and warm. Annie informed her father that Dewani believed in abstaining from premarital sex, which Vinod saw as a sign of dedication to both his religion and Annie as his future wife. With both families approving of the match, Annie and Dewani began planning their wedding. Shortly thereafter, Dewani took Annie to an airfield outside Bristol, where a private plane was waiting to fly them to Paris. That night at the restaurant in the Hotel Ritz, a waiter presented her with a silver platter. On it was a $40,000 diamond engagement ring, balanced on a red rose. It was everything any girl would have dreamed of. Vinod had hoped his children would think of themselves as Indian, even as they lived their lives far from the subcontinent. He was thrilled that Annie had decided to be married in Mumbai, that she had decided, as Vinod would later put it, that her heart was in India. In October 2010, a grand wedding celebration took place just outside Mumbai, finally uniting Dewani and Annie in marriage. The event, spanning 3 days, was an opulent affair that Annie had planned over 3 months in India. Despite the wealth gap between the two families, Vinod had been saving for his children's weddings since they were born. This allowed him to contribute significantly to the extravagant celebration. Annie wore an emerald green bridal sari swathed in gold brocade. Gold and silver bangles adorned her wrists, and a gold and jade necklace hung around her neck. However, beneath the surface of this perfect-looking wedding, some of Annie's close friends had their reservations against her groom. One friend noted that Annie appeared unusually distant during the event, while another described the wedding as a weird experience that seemed out of character for the Annie they knew. 3 weeks after their lavish wedding, the couple went on a 10-day trip to South Africa. The destination had been kept a surprise from Annie, who didn't know about it until the last minute. Dewani took charge of all the planning, a fact that is chilling in hindsight. After a series of flights, the newlyweds arrived at Cape Town International Airport on Friday, November 12th. Opting for a local shuttle service instead of the hotel's dedicated car service, they met Zola Tongo, who drove them to the luxurious $500 a night Cape Grace Hotel. Dewani arranged for Tongo to act as their unofficial tour guide during their stay. The following evening, after spending time at the hotel bar, the couple was picked up by Tongo around 7:30 p.m. Their initial dinner plans changed, and they ended up at the Surfside restaurant in Strand. After a brief stay, Tongo collected them at approximately 10:30 p.m. The plan, Dewani would later tell a reporter, had been to retire to the waterfront district for a drink. But Annie grew up in Sweden, and she felt as if the area around this hotel was just like at home, so clean and safe, a bit sterile, Dewani said. According to him, she wanted to see the real Africa. Cape Town's outlying slums were an unusual place to travel for a pair of wealthy tourists, to say the least. But nevertheless, Dewani claims that at Annie's insistence, Tongo drove them into Gugulethu, a township known for its high crime rate. Between 2005 and 2010, Gugulethu had witnessed over 700 murders, averaging one every 2.5 days. At 10:45 p.m., their Volkswagen van was ambushed by 2 armed men at an intersection. The next thing they knew, a man had shoved Tongo into the passenger seat and taken the wheel. Another man with a gun piled into the back seat with Dewani and Annie. After taking their valuables, the men separated the couple. The couple begged the hijackers not to separate them. But they were so cold, Dewani later recalled in a newspaper interview. They put a gun in my ear and pulled back the trigger. It really was the stuff of movies. Dewani held on to Annie. Look, if you're not going to hurt her, he told the hijackers, let us go. Instead, they forced Dewani out of the vehicle and sped off into the night, Annie alone with the gunman in the back seat. Dewani, distressed and disoriented, pleaded for help from nearby residents. The police soon arrived, and together with Tongo, who had also reported the carjacking, they returned to the Cape Grace Hotel. The hotel manager noted the unusual nature of their late-night drive into a dangerous area during their honeymoon. Vinod, Annie's father, received news of the kidnapping and immediately booked a flight to Cape Town. He tried to stay calm, hoping to pay any ransom that was demanded and set his daughter free. A few minutes later, the phone rang again. This time it was Dewani calling from Cape Grace. "Dad," he said, his voice breaking, "I could not take care of your daughter." This was when Vinod began to panic. The following morning, police responded to a report of an abandoned vehicle in Khayelitsha, about 20 minutes from Gugulethu. It had been on an asphalt strip bordering a weed-choked field all night. At 8 a.m., they discovered Annie Dewani's body in the back seat of the gray Volkswagen minivan. She had been shot once at close range in the neck and had succumbed to her injuries. The bullet, from a 9mm pistol, was lodged in the seat. Her blood had soaked through the upholstery and seeped out the door, pooling on the asphalt. The coroner confirmed that she had bled to death, with additional bruising noted on her body. Vinod, Annie's father, learned of his daughter's death while boarding a connecting flight in Amsterdam. Overwhelmed with grief, he met Dewani at the Cape Grace Hotel the following day. The investigating officers found the case really odd from the outset. They questioned why Tongo, who was familiar with the area's dangers, would drive tourists through Gugulethu at night. Annie's sister also doubted that she would have insisted on such a risky drive. She just wasn't that type of person. The officers also found it suspicious that Tongo and Dewani were released unharmed, while Annie was the only one who was fatally shot. Things were just not adding up. These outrageous details are why the case ended up garnering global attention. Authorities prioritized the investigation. The crime scene yielded one particularly valuable piece of evidence: a thumbprint and fingerprint recovered from the left fender of the minivan. 26-year-old laborer Zolaila Mungani was arrested first. Just 5 days before this, Mungani had been arrested on suspicion of killing a man in a bar fight. The charges were dropped, but his fingerprints had remained in the National Police database. The police found him in a shack near his grandmother's small home in Khayelitsha, a few hundred yards from the field where the Volkswagen had been abandoned. Mungani was lying in bed with a man and 2 women after a night of partying. The police got him out of bed, read him his rights, and arrested him. Searching the shack, they found a cell phone wedged between the mattress and bed frame. "Who does this cell phone belong to?" one of the investigators asked, according to a court affidavit. "It belongs to the taxi driver," Mungani replied. Yes, that phone belonged to none other than Tongo, the man driving Annie and Dewani that fateful night. This development shocked Tongo's friends, who described him as law-abiding and responsible. Dewani, however, claimed he had suspected Tongo's involvement and added that he felt betrayed by the driver. Mziwama Dodakwabe was apprehended shortly after, implicating a third individual, Monde Mbolombo. As the investigation progressed, Annie's family were beginning the process of laying her to rest. Vinod told Dewani that he was going to the morgue to view his daughter's body. But Dewani responded with something strange. "Dad, you cannot see her today. She is all drained out. We have to pump liquid into her body to get her freshened up." The comment struck Vinod as oddly cold-hearted, but he put it out of his mind. A memorial service in London attracted 1,500 attendees, and her ashes were scattered in her favorite area of Lake Vänern near her Swedish hometown. Little things, however, had started to eat at Vinod. Dewani had hosted a pizza party the night before the funeral, which Vinod found disturbingly inappropriate. He had quarreled with Ami, Annie's sister, over who would dress Annie's body for the funeral, and then blocked her from speaking at the memorial service. But still, he decided that keeping quiet at such a fragile time was the best course of action. Now, as if this case wasn't already complicated enough, 2 days before his court appearance, Tongo and his attorney had struck a deal with the provincial government. Tongo would plead guilty to murder, aggravated robbery and kidnapping, and agree to testify against all other participants in the murder. In exchange, he would receive a sentence of 18 years in prison, with the possibility of parole after 12. Despite their devastation, Annie's family agreed to Tongo's plea deal. They decided that knowing the truth about Annie's fate was their priority. As Tongo opened up, what he had to say came as a shock to everyone. He alleged that Dewani had orchestrated the entire crime from the beginning. According to Tongo, Dewani had requested to have someone taken off the scene during their first meeting at the airport. Tongo claimed he was offered 15,000 rand, less than 1,000 British pounds at the time, to arrange the hit. He stated that he contacted Mbolombo, who then reached out to Kwabe to execute the plan. While police reported that CCTV footage appeared to support Tongo's claims, others argued that the same footage also corroborated Dewani's version of events. There was a lot of confusion and hearsay, but the pressure to quickly resolve this case was growing. As the investigation progressed, phone records revealed multiple attempts by Mbolombo to contact Kwabe and Tongo. Hotel CCTV with audio captured Mbolombo saying, "It's that thing we were talking about. It must happen today." Tongo claimed he met Dewani on the day of the murder to exchange currency. This aligned with Vinod's recollection of a phone call where Dewani mentioned being at the market for money exchange. Tongo also alleged that Dewani confirmed the murder arrangements outside the Surfside restaurant and that they exchanged text messages while driving into Gugulethu. Police corroborated the communication between them through cell phone data analysis, but the content of the messages remained unknown due to Dewani's missing phone. As court proceedings began, Dewani and his family vehemently denied all allegations. His lawyers, among the country's most prominent, argued that the scenario proposed by the state was implausible and lacked substantial evidence. Tongo was sentenced to 18 years in prison after accepting a plea agreement. Mbolombo and Kwabe followed suit, both implicating Dewani in their testimonies. Kwabe received a 25-year sentence in exchange for his guilty plea and promised to testify against Dewani. Mngeni, who was not offered a deal, pleaded not guilty but was ultimately convicted and sentenced to life in prison. The judge emphasized the horrific nature of the crime, noting that it was motivated by greed rather than poverty. Annie's family found some solace in learning that she had not been abused during the ordeal. Lawyers for Kwabe and Mngeni alleged police abuse and torture, claims which the authorities denied. Mbolombo, despite admitting involvement, received full immunity in exchange for testifying against Dewani, a decision that surprised many. Dewani was then arrested in Bristol on suspicion of conspiring to murder Annie, with South African authorities seeking his extradition. However, questions remained about the motive, as Dewani appeared to have no financial gain from Annie's death, and their relationship seemed stable. An interview in the Sun newspaper introduced a shocking potential motive in Annie's murder case. Anonymous sources alleged that Dewani was gay and had been paying a male prostitute, Leopold Leiser, known professionally as the German Master, for sex. He showed up at Scotland Yard after recognizing Dewani as a former client who had paid for 3 sessions a few months before his wedding. Leiser claimed Dewani had confided about wanting to end his relationship. Dewani and his family strongly denied these allegations, threatening to sue him and the Sun, while maintaining that he was happily married. Police speculated that Annie might have discovered Dewani's secret during their honeymoon, which ended up in her murder. The idea that his double life would prompt him to murder his new wife might have been far-fetched, but it quickly gained traction with the Hindochas. Maybe Dewani, they supposed, panicking and desperate to preserve appearances, decided to kill Annie rather than face the humiliation of a divorce. The Dewani family hired PR agent Max Clifford to manage media attention, causing tensions with Annie's family over media communications. Max Clifford, once a respected PR agent, later faced his own legal troubles, being sentenced to prison for indecent assaults against young girls. He died in prison following a heart attack. Dewani was admitted to the Priory Hospital in Bristol, reportedly suffering from depression and post-traumatic stress disorder. He was later detained under the Mental Health Act, with representatives claiming he had lost significant weight and was too ill to stand trial. Annie's family in Sweden expressed their desire for Diwani to face trial in South Africa, believing he had questions to answer. They insisted he would receive a fair trial and urged him to end his fight against extradition. The Hindoka family traveled from Sweden to attend Diwani's extradition hearing at Woolwich Crown Court. The extradition hearing focused largely on the safety and conditions of South African prisons, debating whether Diwani would survive if sent there. The Hindosha family expressed frustration with the proceedings, believing Diwani should willingly go to South Africa to prove his innocence. Due to Diwani's mental health issues, the extradition hearings were delayed but eventually began at Belmarsh Magistrates Court in London. Annie's family struggled to understand Diwani's reluctance to face trial in South Africa and share his side of the story. Theresa May, then Home Secretary and later Prime Minister of the United Kingdom, signed an order for Diwani's extradition to South Africa. The Hindocha family expressed satisfaction with this decision, but acknowledged the long road ahead in their quest for answers about Annie's death. Upon extradition, Diwani pleaded not guilty to all 5 charges against him. However, he surprised the court by admitting through his lawyer that he was bisexual, had encounters with male prostitutes, and had low hormone levels that might prevent him from having children. This revelation disappointed Annie's family, who considered legal action for his dishonesty. The prosecution intended to argue that the murder was linked to a sham marriage meant to conceal Diwani's sexual identity. Diwani's defense statement admitted to a turbulent relationship with Annie. An email from Diwani to Annie, written before their wedding, was read in court, revealing his concerns about their relationship and Annie's happiness. Court records showed Diwani had accessed gay porn and dating websites during the honeymoon and shortly after Annie's body was discovered. The prosecution argued that Diwani's conflicted sexuality and alleged desires to end the marriage were motives for the crime. However, Judge Jeanette Traverso ultimately ruled evidence about Diwani's sexuality inadmissible. Tongo, the state's key witness, provided crucial testimony about the alleged conspiracy. CCTV footage showed interactions between Tongo and Diwani that the prosecution claimed were suspicious, including a conversation in the hotel lobby shortly after Annie's death and an exchange of a white envelope in a private area. Diwani's defense argued these were innocent interactions, with the envelope containing payment for Tongo's driving services. However, questions arose about why this exchange occurred privately, away from Annie's father. Tongo underwent 7 days of testimony, including 5 days of intense cross-examination. He branded Diwani a liar, maintaining his allegations against the British businessman. Diwani consistently denied all charges against him. Tongo's testimony came under intense scrutiny during cross-examination by defense counsel Francois Van Zyl. As the trial progressed, Tongo's version of events began to show inconsistencies. He claimed at one point that the police must have added details to his statements without his knowledge. Tongo, Umbalombo, and Kwabe were all found to have committed perjury when their testimonies contradict each other and their initial affidavits. Legal experts noted that while minor inconsistencies in witness testimonies are understandable, significant contradictions severely impact witness credibility. As the state's case weakened, the defense grew stronger. On the 23rd day of the trial, Diwani's lawyers requested the case be dismissed due to these flaws, even before Diwani took the stand. Judge Jeanette Traverso ultimately ruled in favor of the defense. She criticized the prosecution's case, citing the numerous contradictions in key witness statements. Diwani was found not guilty, a decision that deeply disappointed Annie's family. Reactions to the verdict were mixed. Some supported Diwani's acquittal, while others expressed skepticism. Diwani himself stated that the evidence of proven liars had led to a witch hunt against him and hindered the pursuit of truth. Annie's family, feeling let down by the justice system, sought to reopen the inquest into her death in the UK. However, Coroner Andrew Walker declined, citing insufficient cause and the prohibition of reaching conclusions inconsistent with South African court findings. A formal complaint alleging bias was lodged against Judge Traverso, though she was later cleared of these claims. Mngeni, one of the convicted participants in the crime, died in prison from a brain tumor. Leopold Leiser, who had claimed a secret relationship with Dewani, took his own life in 2016 due to stress from the court case. As of 2018, Dewani was reported to be living in the UK with a partner. In 2021, Tongo was up for parole after serving half his sentence. Annie's father and uncle met with him in prison, finding his emotional response to Annie's photo unconvincing. Tongo's parole was withdrawn a day before his scheduled release. The case remains divisive, with various theories about what truly happened. Some believe it was a random carjacking gone wrong. Others suspect Tongo planned it as an extortion scheme, while some remain convinced of Dewani's involvement. Annie's family continues to seek closure and answers. The conflicting accounts from multiple parties mean that the full truth of the events on that fateful night in 2010 may never be fully known, leaving Annie's loved ones in a state of unresolved grief. Annie's destiny was that her life lasted just 28 years, Vinod said, settling on the living room sofa. Everybody has to die, but the way she went is not acceptable. It is not right. Nobody should go through what we are going through. But now I want to know what you think. Do you think Shreen Dewani got away with murder? Or do you think there's more to this than meets the eye? Traveling the world is a dream for many, but sometimes that dream can turn into a nightmare. Grace Mullane was just 21 when she graduated from university and set out to explore the world. And while in New Zealand, she went on a Tinder date with a local man. They were seen kissing, cuddling, and laughing together. But after that night, Grace was never seen again. The next morning, he left his hotel room, not with Grace, but with a suitcase. Today, we're diving into the tragic case that shocked the world, the cruel murder of Grace Mullane. Let's get started. This case actually starts in December 2018 in New Zealand, but the story truly begins in Essex, in the southeast of England. That's where local girl Grace Mullane decided she wanted to travel the world. Born on December 2, 1996, to her mom, Gillian, and dad, David. She had two older brothers, Declan and Michael, and together they made up a super happy family. In fact, everything we know about Grace's childhood and upbringing is full of positivity. Grace was creative and outgoing, with a special talent for art. She loved painting and drawing, and she even ran an Instagram account called Art by Mullane, where she shared her work. Tragically, the last photo she posted there was a painting of a skull with the caption, "Two can keep a secret if one of them is dead." It's a chilling foreshadowing of what would happen to Grace less than 2 months later. Now, after graduating in 2018, Grace decided to take a gap year, and in October, her parents dropped her off at the airport for her solo travel adventure. Grace's first stop was South America, specifically Peru. She was especially excited to visit the chocolate factories there because, fun fact, that part of the world produces half the world's chocolate. She also trekked to the ancient city of Machu Picchu, a journey that takes 5 days to complete. Grace joined a trekking group, made many good friends along the way, and celebrated with a group photo at the top. Despite having an incredible time, Grace made sure to stay in regular contact with her family back home. Her dad said they heard from her every day, whether it was a text, a FaceTime call, or some photos of her adventures. Staying in touch was comforting for everyone because, as much as Grace was enjoying herself, her family was worried. As exhilarating as solo travel can be, especially for a young woman in a foreign country, it's also risky. Solo female travelers can be more vulnerable to criminals, and Grace was aware of these dangers. But with her trekking group by her side, she felt safe and enjoyed her time in Peru. After Peru, the second leg of Grace's journey took her to New Zealand. She landed in Auckland on November 20th and set out to explore the entire country, starting with the North Island. She spent time island hopping, likely enjoying the stunning white sand beaches and clear blue waters. After 10 days of soaking in these picturesque scenes, Grace returned to the bustling city of Auckland on November 30th. She checked into Base Backpackers Hostel, a popular spot for travelers like her, with locations across Australia and New Zealand. Grace planned to stay in the city for a while, enjoying the urban experience after days of island hopping. To make the most of her time, Grace decided to meet some locals, hoping to get insider tips on the best spots in town, and what better way to meet someone than through a little holiday romance. Grace turned to Tinder, the dating app, eager to connect with someone, and maybe even celebrate her upcoming 22nd birthday on December 2nd with a special someone. She matched with a man on November 30th and made plans to meet up with him the very next day, her birthday eve. It was a quick turnaround, but time was limited, and Grace wanted to make the most of it. But little did she know, not everyone on dating apps has good intentions. Grace was about to learn this lesson the hard way. The date took place on December 1st, and the next day her birthday arrived. But instead of the usual flurry of updates and photos from Grace, there was nothing. No responses to the birthday messages flooding in, no FaceTime calls to her family, just silence. Grace's family, who were used to hearing from her daily, started to worry. At first, they might have chalked it up to time zone differences. After all, New Zealand is 13 hours ahead of the UK. But as time passed, their concern grew. Given all the information earlier, Grace was not one to ignore her loved ones, especially on her birthday. By December 3rd, Grace's family was in a full-blown panic. When they woke up that morning, she still hadn't responded to her birthday messages. By then, it was clear that she wasn't just too busy. Something was seriously wrong. Her family, growing more desperate, tried every way possible to contact her, but received no response. Finally, on December 4th, they filed a missing persons report with the Auckland authorities. Grace's case immediately became a top priority for the police. She was a young woman traveling alone in a foreign country, and now she was missing. The possibilities were terrifying. Had she gotten lost? Was she injured? Or worse, had something awful happened to her? With fears mounting, her picture and the details of her disappearance quickly spread across every news outlet, newspaper, and social media platform. The story captured worldwide attention. As the investigation progressed, Grace's father, David Milne, flew to New Zealand, arriving on December 7th. The journey from Britain to Auckland took over 24 hours, but he wasted no time joining the police to make a public appeal for Grace's safe return. He pleaded with the public to think back to the night of December 1st. Maybe someone saw something that could help bring his daughter back.
Thank you for coming today. As you know, Grace has been missing for several days. We last had contact with her on Saturday the 1st of December. And as a family, we've been extremely concerned for her welfare. Grace is a lovely, outgoing, fun-loving, family-orientated daughter. Grace has never been out of contact for this amount of time. She's usually in daily contact with either her mother, myself, her two brothers, members of the family on social media. I don't know if you know, but Grace is on a year-long worldwide overseas experience. Grace started this travel journey in Peru in South America, and at the end of this was really looking forward to the second leg in New Zealand. She arrived here on the 20th of November and has been bombarding us with numerous photographs and messages of her adventures. We are all extremely upset, and it is very difficult at this time to fully describe the range of emotions we are going through. While we are very grateful for the media coverage both here and back home, we are finding this situation quite upsetting, and would sincerely hope that the media continue to respect our privacy. Finally, I would like to take this opportunity to appeal to anybody who has seen, spoken to or come into contact with Grace over the last few days, and to come forward with any detail, no matter how small, and contact the investigation team. Once again, I thank you all for coming.
New Zealand, known for its low crime rate and ranking as the 4th safest country in the world in 2023, was in shock. The idea that a young woman could simply vanish in the middle of a city was almost unthinkable. But despite this, Auckland's extensive CCTV network became a crucial tool in the investigation. The first place the police checked was Base Backpackers, where Grace had been staying. The cameras captured her leaving the hostel on the evening of December 1st for her date, but they never saw her return. The search for other CCTV footage to trace the rest of her night began immediately. Meanwhile, other officers scoured Grace's social media profiles for clues, and they stumbled upon something intriguing: a new comment on her profile photo on Facebook. The comment, left on the night she disappeared, was from a man named Jesse Kempson. He wrote, "Beautiful, very radiant," a compliment that caught the police's attention due to its timing. Curious, the police checked out Jesse's profile. He appeared to be a bit older than Grace, and his profile indicated he was based in Auckland. Perhaps he was someone Grace had met during her travels, someone who could provide insight into her disappearance, or maybe he was involved. The police knew they needed to talk to him. On December 5th, the police left a message for Jesse, asking him to contact them regarding Grace's disappearance. The next day he called back, confirming that he did know Grace because they had gone on a date on December 1st. However, Jesse said he couldn't discuss much over the phone since he was at work. The police asked him to come to the station later that day, and he agreed. When Jesse arrived at the station, he was cooperative and seemed genuine in his willingness to help. He patiently answered all the police's questions, starting from the very beginning of his interaction with Grace. At first, the police weren't particularly suspicious of him, as he appeared to be just another witness who might have some useful information. But despite his calm demeanor during police questioning, the truth about him began to unravel. He had matched with Grace on Tinder, where they quickly connected. Jesse made the first move, and their conversation led to a date on December 1st. They met at Sky City, a popular entertainment complex in Auckland, and enjoyed drinks and burgers at Andy's Burger Bar. Jesse claimed they had a great time, but after parting ways, Grace unmatched him on Tinder the next day, which confused and offended him. He told the police he stayed out drinking alone after their date, eventually returning to his hotel room, though he had no memory of how he got there due to his intoxication. Despite his blackout, he confidently answered all the police's questions, maintaining that he had nothing to hide. He even volunteered his DNA, which the police requested as part of their investigation. However, Jesse's composure cracked when a police officer left the room. He anxiously asked if he was being arrested for something he didn't do. The officer reassured him that this was merely a missing persons investigation, but Jesse's panic hinted at something deeper.
Not yet. She may be alive and well.
Okay.
But she might also be dead. Okay? And it could be that you've done it.
Moments later, after being left alone in the interview room,
Hey, I just want to ask a question. Am I being arrested for something I didn't do?
You haven't been arrested, mate.
Oh.
No.
Oh, it's like, holy shit.
As the investigation continued, police uncovered more of Jesse's lies. He had claimed to be a lawyer to one officer and the manager of Woolworths to another, neither of which was true. In reality, Jesse was unemployed, often lying and conning his way through life. He had recently been fired from a call center job for faking sales by calling his own phone, and he was living in a hotel, likely due to his inability to rent an apartment on his meager income. Jesse also had a history of lying to impress women he met on dating apps, claiming connections to gangs or even pretending to have cancer. Many women had ghosted him after realizing his lies, but Grace, unaware of his past, had agreed to meet him. The turning point in the investigation came when the police presented Jesse with CCTV footage from the morning after his date with Grace. The footage showed Jesse leaving his apartment at 8:14 a.m., contradicting his claim that he woke up around 9 or 10 a.m. hungover. Even more suspicious, when Jesse returned to his apartment shortly after, he was carrying a suitcase, a detail that set off alarm bells for the investigators. When confronted with this evidence, Jesse's story changed. He admitted to going out that morning to buy a suitcase because he was planning to move out of the hotel. Despite trying to appear cooperative, his changing story and the suitcase raised serious suspicions. The police were now convinced that Jesse Kempson had something to do with Grace's disappearance. But despite their growing certainty that Jesse was involved in Grace's disappearance, the police were still trying to figure out the best way to handle the situation. They had to move carefully, ensuring they didn't spook him into clamming up or evading further questioning. On the third day, the police secured a search warrant for Jesse's hotel room, an action that would soon prove crucial. When the police searched Jesse's hotel room, what they found was horrifying. Initially, there was nothing obviously amiss. No large blood stains, no signs of a struggle, nothing that immediately suggested something terrible had occurred. But the police knew they needed to dig deeper, so they employed chemical testing techniques like luminol. If you've ever watched shows like CSI, you're likely familiar with luminol. It's a chemical that can reveal traces of blood, even if it's been cleaned up, by making it glow under a UV light. When the police used luminol in Jesse's hotel room, they uncovered something chilling: footprints across the carpet left by someone who had stepped in blood and tracked it all over the room. They also found small splatters of blood on the hotel fridge, an unsettling discovery that hinted at something far more sinister than a simple accident. Further analysis of the blood confirmed it was female DNA. While the tests couldn't conclusively identify the blood as Grace's due to the cleanup, it was highly suggestive that it belonged to her. After the discovery of blood evidence in his hotel room, Jesse Kempson was arrested just 2 days after his first interview, now on suspicion of Grace Mullane's murder. In his second interview, Jesse finally admitted that Grace had come back to his hotel room after their date and that something had gone terribly wrong. Now that he was coming clean, or at least appearing to, he started his story from the beginning, contradicting everything he had previously told the police. He recounted how they had a few drinks at Andy's Burger Bar, then moved on to a Mexican restaurant for more drinks, and later to another bar, possibly a blues bar, where they continued drinking. CCTV footage confirmed they were all over each other during this time, looking very much like a couple having a great time. Grace appeared to be happy, leaning into Jesse, smiling, and enjoying his company. She felt safe with him, as evident by how close they were throughout the night. At one point during the date, Grace texted a friend expressing how well she clicked with Jesse and how excited she was. Tragically, this was the last time her friends heard from her. After leaving the final bar, the pair headed back to Jesse's hotel, still physically close, with Jesse's arm around Grace as they walked. Once they reached the hotel, more CCTV footage captured them in the lobby and elevator, holding hands and looking affectionate. This footage would be the last time Grace was seen alive, as she never left that hotel room. Jesse then described what he claimed happened in the hotel room. According to him, they began kissing, and things got heated. Grace allegedly brought up the book 50 Shades of Grey, a popular erotic romance trilogy that delves into BDSM themes. Now, in case you're not familiar, BDSM stands for bondage, discipline, dominance, submission, sadism, and masochism. Jesse claimed that Grace expressed interest in exploring similar kinky stuff and asked him to engage in more violent sexual activities. He stated that initially the sex was normal and placid, but then Grace allegedly asked for bondage and to be bitten. Jesse claimed he was hesitant at first, but Grace insisted, saying they were in the moment and should just go with it. He further claimed that Grace asked him to pin her arms down and squeeze them tighter, indicating that she wanted to escalate the intensity of their encounter. Jesse's account suggested that the entire situation was consensual and that Grace had initiated the more extreme activities. According to him, Grace had asked for choking during their sexual encounter, a claim that remains unverified and is highly dubious given his history of lies. Additionally, after their encounter, Jesse allegedly got up and went into the shower. He claims he was so drunk that he fell asleep standing up, something most people find hard to believe. When he awoke, he was still in the shower, dried off, and crawled back into bed. Incredibly, he says he didn't check on Grace. He didn't turn on any lights or speak to her. He assumed she had left when he didn't feel her beside him. It wasn't until the next morning, when he found her lifeless on the floor with blood coming from her nose, that he realized something was gravely wrong. He tried to wake her by yelling and shaking her, but it was no use. The blood, the coldness of her body, none of this registered as an emergency to him until it was too late.
British backpacker Grace Millane was killed by pressure to her neck, according to an expert Crown witness. The forensic pathologist who carried out the post-mortem examination on Grace Millane's body was in the witness box today in the trial of the 27-year-old accused of her murder. The Crown's case is that the accused strangled her in his central Auckland apartment, but the defence says that her death was an accident during consensual rough sex.
Jesse describes his reaction as complete shock and terror, but his behavior raises more questions than answers. Instead, he purchased cleaning supplies, a suitcase, and even rented a car to transport Grace's body. After buying all these things, he went back to his hotel room, where he began the grotesque task of stuffing her body into a suitcase he had just bought. He told the police it was a traumatic experience for him, claiming he vomited several times due to the horror of the situation. As he contorted and pushed Grace's body into the suitcase, he kept repeating, "I'm sorry, I'm so sorry." The next morning, around 6 a.m., he was seen leaving his apartment, wheeling out 2 large suitcases, one of which contained Grace's body. What was in the other suitcase remains a mystery, but it's likely he had cleaning supplies or perhaps Grace's belongings. Her handbag and phone were never found, hinting that he disposed of them. Jesse loaded the suitcases into his car and was caught on CCTV, buying a spare tire about 10 minutes later. 3 hours later, he returned to his hotel barefoot and covered in mud, suggesting that his shoes were likely ruined during his cleanup. He was also spotted wearing a different outfit, which he had presumably had dry cleaned. Surveillance footage also captured Jesse at a self-service car wash, scrubbing mud off his rental car before returning it. Throughout this entire ordeal, Jesse appeared unnervingly calm and composed, a stark contrast to the severity of his actions. Ultimately, Jesse's meticulous but flawed attempts at covering his tracks were undermined by the extensive CCTV footage. Charged with Grace's murder, he didn't resist arrest. With such overwhelming evidence, he had little room to argue. One day after his arrest, Jesse led the police to Grace's body, which he had buried in the Waitakere Ranges, a scenic, remote hiking trail about 32 kilometers from Auckland.
I went to the warehouse at the atrium, and brought a suitcase. I went back and I was just in shock because it just didn't seem right. I left to go and get cleaning products. So I messaged a friend and said I'll meet you at Revelry. After finishing drinks with her, I got back to city life. And the whole time I just kept saying, I'm sorry. And then I went downstairs and I grabbed the porter thing And I put the suitcase on top of the porta thing. I drove the hire car into Wilson's car park and parked it. I woke up the next day at about 5 a.m. and drove the car out to Cumu at first. I picked up a shovel from ITM at Cumu. I ended up driving towards the Waitakaries. I went into the bush. I dug a hole. I went and got the suitcase and I covered the hole. And then I drove.
Where is her possessions?
I threw them in the rubbish.
Whereabouts?
Albert Park rubbish.
Right. So what items of her property have been disposed of in Albert Park?
Everything.
All of her clothing?
Everything that was in the room.
Right. Whereabouts did you clean the car? The outside of the car?
I think it was in Henderson. I don't know West very well.
Okay. And what did you use to clean the car?
A water blaster thing from a car cleaning place.
Did she have any injuries?
Not that I can remember. I was just panicking.
Did you inflict any injuries on her that caused her to die?
No.
Did you kill Grace Mullane? Okay. And you're under arrest for the murder of Grace Mullane on or about the 2nd of December.
Okay.
You understand?
Yeah.
Did you intend to cause her death?
No.
Are you ready to take us to where she is?
Yeah.
In Jesse Kempson's trial, he pleaded not guilty, claiming Grace's death was an accident during rough sex. However, the autopsy revealed 9 fresh bruises on Grace, consistent with being restrained, and her death was due to prolonged neck pressure, not a quick accident. Jesse's defense argued that Grace's interest in BDSM implied consent, but the evidence suggested he applied fatal pressure intentionally, contradicting his claim. And we're not done yet because the trial also highlighted disturbing aspects of Jesse's behavior. He was seen calmly dealing with Grace's body and later engaging in violent porn, showing no remorse. He also took intimate photos of Grace and researched ways to dispose of her body. His post-murder actions, including going on a date with another woman while Grace's body lay nearby, further showcased his disturbing nature. Finally, Jesse was convicted of murder and sentenced to life in prison with a minimum of 17 years. The trial exposed his history of violence, including previous assaults, and this case led to a change in the law in England and Wales, making rough sex an invalid defense for violent crimes. In Grace's memory, the charity Love Grace was established, providing essential items to women in need. And in memory of Grace, let's make sure no one else suffers like she did. If you love to travel, whether you're a woman or a man, be careful and don't trust everyone you meet. Sometimes people who seem nice can actually be very dangerous. So, stay safe out there. They say that the saddest thing about betrayal is, it never comes from your enemies. It comes from those you trust the most. Finding a genuine life partner is something most people dream of. But as we'll see in today's case, not everyone gets one. Laura thought she had found the man of her dreams, and despite their rocky relationship, she kept giving him chances. Until one day, he betrayed her in the worst possible way. This case is a cautionary tale about how people don't change, they just get better at hiding who they really are. Keep watching to learn what happened. Laura Grillo was born on August 17, 1978, in Baltimore, Maryland. In 2008, she was a single divorced mother living with her 2 children. Times were rough. The 2008 financial crisis led to many layoffs, and it took a toll on many families. But Laura kept her head up and did her best. While playing video games one day, she began chatting with John Makris, a Greek businessman. Laura, having recently separated from her husband, was feeling lonely and vulnerable. So they started talking regularly through email, text messages, and phone calls. After around 6 months of communication, Laura decided to move with her children to Rowlett, Texas, to be closer to Makris. In Texas, Laura worked 2 jobs to afford her own residence near him. Makris became a huge source of support for Laura and developed a loving relationship with her children, which Laura greatly appreciated. She was optimistic about the future. Makris didn't seem to have any red flags, at least at first. In 2010, Laura discovered she was pregnant with his child. The couple was overjoyed to learn that they were expecting a daughter. By all accounts, Makris proved to be an excellent father. He actively took part in childcare duties, including changing diapers, playing with his daughter, taking her to the park, and showering her with affection. Their daughter, Maria, became the center of his world. Following Maria's birth, Laura and her 3 children moved into Makris's home and officially became a blended family. Laura assumed the role of a stay-at-home mother, caring for the children, and she was pretty happy with this arrangement. She also invited her brother Brian, who was on the autism spectrum and had hearing impairments, to live with them. This living situation was helpful for Brian, and Makris had no issues with it either. He welcomed him into the family. Laura and Makris jointly established a home remodeling business. In November 2014, they both completed the Citizens Police Academy program and became volunteers for police services. Their volunteer work included administrative tasks, community surveillance, search and rescue assistance, and issuing parking violation citations. As time went on, however, friends noticed that something was not right between the two. They were beginning to experience real difficulties that they hid from the world. In June 2015, Laura's patience with Makris had run out. Friends noticed that she was often sad and withdrawn, while he was possessive and jealous. Laura decided to end the relationship while Makris was away on a trip. Instead of telling this to his face, she decided to break up with him over email. Now, this might seem like a super impersonal way to do it, especially since he was the father of her child, but it's entirely possible that Laura was afraid of him physically lashing out on her. In her email, Laura shared many grievances she had with the relationship. First, Laura talked about all the difficulties she faced for 4 years and mentioned that she refused to continue the same pattern for another decade. She brought up challenging times during her pregnancy, including Makris's and his family's doubts about the paternity of their daughter. This situation had gotten so bad, she was forced to take a paternity test. Suffice to say, this can be quite a humiliating experience for any expecting mother. Laura acknowledged that there were a lot of good times, but the relationship had deteriorated so much over time that it wasn't worth continuing. She was concerned about the impact of their constant arguing on their children. Finally, Laura stated that she wanted to focus on caring for them by herself. This ended up being the most alarming part of the email, and one that would set into motion the tragedy that unfolded shortly after. Laura said that she will move away from Texas for better job opportunities and to provide a better life for her children. She ended the email by requesting Makris for some extra time to find a job and save money before moving out of their shared home. She also informed him that she had already discussed the situation with the children and prepared them for the changes, including the idea of a school transfer. Unsurprisingly, upon receiving this news, Makris reacted strongly. He returned home immediately. Makris begged her to reconsider the relationship and tried to reconcile with her. He refused to lose Laura, her children, and their daughter Maria. Nobody knows why, but Laura decided to stay with Marquis after he begged her to not leave. Maybe there was too much at stake, or maybe she wanted the stability of a 2-parent home. Nevertheless, what happened next is something Laura could never have anticipated. In July 2015, Makris made a life-changing decision. He proposed to marry Laura in front of her 3 children and her brother, and the couple seemingly patched things up. Laura accepted his proposal, marking what they hoped would be a fresh start for their relationship and putting old problems behind. Over the next 4 months, Laura immersed herself in planning their wedding. She chose her best friend, Heather, as her matron of honor and asked her brother to walk her down the aisle. Macris, meanwhile, selected his co-worker, Jesus Trevino, to be his best man. At the time, nobody knew this, but his co-worker was hiding a horrible secret, one that would be uncovered after the tragedy. Friday, November 13th, 2015 began as a typical day. It was now only 8 days before Macris and Laura's scheduled wedding. Laura left home early to take the children to school, while Macris went to Home Depot with his mother, who was visiting for the wedding. They were purchasing supplies for their business. Laura returned home between 8:10 and 8:22 a.m. Macris attempted to call her at 8:39 a.m. and again at 8:46 a.m., but she didn't answer. At 9:50 a.m., Macris, along with his 2 co-workers, Trevino and James Valleda, were at the Home Depot on Lemon Avenue in Dallas, purchasing doors. This location was 44 minutes away from Macris and Laura's home. From there, the group, including Macris's mother, drove to another Home Depot on Forest Central Drive, which was 22 minutes from the first Home Depot. Surveillance cameras at these locations confirmed their presence. At 11:30 a.m., the school contacted Macris, inquiring if someone would be picking up his daughter. After multiple unanswered calls to Laura, Macris reached out to a neighbor and asked them to check on Laura at their home. At the same time, Laura's brother Brian woke up and entered the kitchen. There, he discovered a sight that would haunt him forever. He saw a female lying face down in a pool of blood, clutching onto her purse. Reeling from the shock, he didn't immediately recognize who it was. Thinking it was Marcus's mother, Brian immediately dialed 911. A little while later, the neighbor arrived at the house, along with the police. As the police waited for the medical examiner to arrive at the scene, they quickly began to investigate the house. Upon examining the house, the police made some very important discoveries. First, there were no signs of forced entry, and the front door featured a push-button lock and unlock mechanism. Perhaps the attacker was probably someone who was known to the family.
God.
Stay on me, Drew. Clear. Clear. Got blood in the kitchen, blood down this hall.
Next, they discovered shell casings from a .40 caliber weapon, a type more commonly associated with law enforcement than civilian use. This detail narrowed it down a bit more. In the bedroom, an open safe was found with its contents scattered about. Drawers and jewelry boxes had been emptied, and it was later reported to the police that a necklace valued at thousands of dollars was missing, along with cash. They speculated that Laura may have interrupted a burglary in progress. The investigators proceeded to collect fingerprint and blood evidence from the scene. As the search continued, Macris arrived at the scene, desperate for answers. The officers gave him the little information they had about this heinous crime, as the identity of the victim could not be confirmed without disturbing the crime scene. After the medical examiner's arrival, they carefully turned over the victim's body. To everyone's shock, the victim was Laura Grillo. She was holding her Roll-It ID card in her hand. The examination revealed that Laura had been shot once above her left eye, with the bullet lodging behind her right ear. The presence of Laura's purse at the scene led police to conclude that she had been attacked almost immediately after returning home. The police first interviewed Laura's brother. He told police he had been asleep all morning and that he had woken up and found the body, but he had never heard the gunshot. At that point, they were viewing him with suspicion because he was at home during the crime, and not hearing a loud gunshot seemed impossible. However, he was later cleared after investigators learned about his hearing disability. He was completely deaf in one ear and partially deaf in the other. Next, investigators spoke with Macris, who seemed suspiciously unaffected by his fiancée's death. Macris was acting weird. It was almost like he was happy she was murdered. Rowlett Police Department Detective Cruz Hernandez said, "He cried very lightly for about a minute. It struck me odd that there was a lack of emotion or very weak crying. It just seemed strange to me." He provided details about his trips to Home Depot. Macris maintained he had no knowledge of the murder and told detectives there had been about $8,000 to $9,000 in their home's safe. Macris also passed a residue test, proving that he was not the one who fired the weapon.
Just go through with the police officers and detectives at the scene. I'm sorry for your loss. I want you to know that we're going to find out what happened. Come closer. What would be the motive for someone to come in the house, attack Laura, and take her? No idea. Somebody chose to come in that house. But why? That's what we're going to find out. Did Laura receive any bad news? Rosie? No, to my knowledge. Okay, everything was good. I understand y'all know a Rosie coming up. Yes, we're in a week.
Next, the investigators interviewed Macris's two co-workers who corroborated his account. CCTV footage also confirmed these stories.
And he texted me, don't be late, whatever.
Don't be late to
8 o'clock. We were going to meet up at Home Depot.
Which one?
In Dallas.
What happened there? Just started holding doors. Okay. He pulled up and
He being
John.
okay.
John showed up and everything. We started working. Yeah. Okay.
After leaving, Macris would talk to Laura's friend Heather and tell her that he felt the detectives were planning to pin Laura's death on him. This seemed strange to Heather because there wasn't any information being released about the case or who had done it. But still, at that point, Macris seemed to be in the clear. A few days following Laura's murder, investigators reviewed video footage taken at the crime scene that had been captured by a police officer's body cam. When asked about who lived in his home at that time, Macris mentioned Brian, the 3 children, himself, and his visiting mother. But there was one important person he neglected to mention.
It looks like a gunshot wound. That is all I can tell you. You have cameras on the house?
Yes.
Do they record?
They used to. I don't know if they do.
Okay.
Laura, his dead fiancée. This omission made everyone a little more than suspicious, particularly because at that point, Macris had not officially been informed that the victim in his house was his soon-to-be wife. So why didn't he say her name? What was he hiding? 3 days after Laura's murder, Macris informed the investigators that he would no longer speak to them without an attorney present.
Well, let me cut to the chase a little bit. Jesus is a dumbass, all right? At the end of the day, you shouldn't hire a dumbass to do a job because he's going to screw it up, all right? And if he doesn't screw it up, he's going to talk about it.
I didn't hire the dumbass, that's my problem.
Do what?
I did not hire the dumbass. I did not pay him any money, that's my problem. I did not want Laura killed. I tried to get married with her for at least 3 years. I loved her, I still love her.
Say this. I'm sorry.
Oh, I am sorry that my wife was killed. I cried so many times. I mean, you're telling me that, you're telling me that basically admitting that I hired him to do the murder. That's what you're telling me.
Am I telling you to admit that? No, I already know that you did that. I'm giving you an opportunity to tell the truth.
I need to talk to the attorney.
Detective Christopher Sawyer said, John didn't seem overly upset. They're about to be married in a week, and he's not reacting the way that I would expect someone to act in that position. Macris exhibited other odd behavior, like immediately wanting to move back into his home and get rid of Laura's possessions. He even had the audacity to suggest using the wedding flowers for her funeral instead. It's something Laura's matron of honor found horrifying. The investigators also discovered the heated email Laura had written to Macris, Vileda was also interviewed, but the detectives took an aggressive approach with him. At first, the officers decided to let him go because they didn't have concrete evidence, but that doesn't mean they were ready to give up. The officers offered him a ride back to his motel. Vileda accepted it, but that might not have been the smartest move for him. Once they reached the motel room, the detective asked if he could search his room to clear him as a suspect. He agreed, but as the search went on, the atmosphere in the room began to get tenser. Suddenly, the investigators found a book bag under the bed. When they opened the bag, they found a pair of latex gloves and 2 burner phones. The detectives had just uncovered evidence that could tie Vileda and Trevino to the crime. By digging into the 2 men's pasts, investigators learned they were both convicted sex offenders and that Trevino was a previously deported felon who was back in the U.S. illegally. The investigation then turned to cell phone records for the 2 suspects to track their movements on the morning of the crime. These records revealed that Trevino had been in Rowlett that morning, contradicting his earlier statement about being in Dallas. Around 7:30 a.m., Macris was the one who was heading to Dallas, while Trevino and Vileda were traveling to Rowlett. Trevino's phone pinged off towers only a mile away from Laura's home at 8:15 a.m. and 8:20 a.m. This was enough to show their guilt. On December 17, 2015, 5 weeks after Laura's death, police obtained an arrest warrant for Trevino for failing to register as a sex offender. But suddenly, he had disappeared. The police turned to the media to find tips on his whereabouts. Fortunately, this strategy worked, and they were able to contact Trevino's ex-girlfriend, Lorena Rodriguez. She informed them that on December 13, 2014, weeks before Laura's murder, she had filed a police report. This is the report that would break the case wide open. The police report filed by Lorena contained alarming information. She stated that her boyfriend had been hired to commit murder. According to her statement, Trevino had told her a month prior that his boss had offered him $15,000 to kill his wife, or $5,000 to find someone who would. She repeatedly asked Trevino if he was serious, to which he consistently told her yes and claimed he was desperate for money. Lorena didn't know the identity of Trevino's boss or the would-be victim, or even the location or any specific details of the future crime, but she still decided to go ahead and file a report. The most unfortunate fact here is that this report was not taken seriously at all. Nobody followed up on it at the time. Investigators then obtained warrants to search Trevino's Google accounts. Their search uncovered a photograph of a woman holding a Springfield .40 caliber handgun, which matched the caliber of the shell casing found at the crime scene. The woman in the photo was identified as another ex-girlfriend of Trevino, residing in Colorado. Upon interviewing her, the police acquired Trevino's new cell phone number. This information led them to locate Trevino in Clearwater, Florida, where he was arrested by ICE agents on April 1, 2016. He was escorted back to Dallas County. The investigation led to another of Trevino's friends named Ramon, proved to be one of the biggest developments in the case. Detective Cruz said, "Before I could ask any questions, Ramon told me, 'I know why you're here. It's because Jesus killed the boss's wife.'" Detectives were then led to the apartment where the photo of Trevino's ex-girlfriend was taken. They interviewed the current resident, who was Trevino's former roommate. He revealed to the officers that Trevino had asked him to be the getaway driver many times, but it was an offer he had declined. On May 9, 2016, Vileda was arrested for failing to register as a sex offender. After questioning by police and a Texas Ranger, Vileda provided a full confession. He disclosed that Macris and Trevino had meticulously planned the details, including timing, the getaway car, routes through the neighborhood to avoid cameras, and signals from Macris indicating when to proceed to Rowlett. Vileda stated that Trevino had told him about being paid $15,000 by Macris to murder Laura. Vileda cooperated with the police, showing them the getaway car and the route they had taken that morning. Law enforcement recovered the vehicle, a silver Kia, which had been purchased on Craigslist specifically for use in the crime and then abandoned. The investigation revealed that Trevino and Veleda made several unsuccessful attempts to carry out their plan before the actual crime took place. On one occasion, they aborted the attempt because a neighbor's garage door was open. 2 other attempts were also abandoned for undisclosed reasons. On the morning of Friday, November 13, 2015, Macris sent a text message to Trevino informing him that both he and Laura had left the house. Following this signal, Trevino and Veleda drove to the Grillo home in the silver Kia they had purchased. Trevino, who was familiar with the house and knew the front door code, concealed a gun in his hoodie pocket before approaching the residence. Veleda testified that he drove around the block, and upon his return, he saw Laura's van in the driveway. Trevino was standing outside wearing a hoodie, ski mask, and gloves. On the morning of Laura's shooting, Trevino let himself inside the couple's home using the security code provided by Macris. He waited for Laura to return and then snuck up on the mother of 3 and shot her in the head. According to Veleda, the money in the couple's safe was removed before the murder occurred. As Veleda drove away, Trevino dismantled the gun into several pieces and placed them into his backpack. He also discarded his clothing and shoes out of the car window, one piece at a time. The pair then called Macris to confirm that the job was done. They proceeded to Veleda's hotel to switch from the silver Kia to a black Lincoln before meeting Macris at Home Depot. En route, they stopped at a gas station where Trevino gave Veleda a garbage bag containing pieces of the dismantled gun, instructing him to dispose of it in a dumpster.
To the Grand Canyon, right? Now what I'm going to ask you to do is take a leap of faith and to trust me. All right? You're my friend, right? I'm trying to be your friend. I'm the best friend you have in the whole freaking world.
Can you go get your pen and paper?
So how's it kick off?
Alright, when Jesus first mentioned anything about this, I disregarded it. I thought he was just blood stock. He shows up in the morning and we get in a car and we go. The whole time, I'm still thinking he's even when he gets there. He gets out, he does his thing. I heard nothing.
And when he gets back in the car, what does he say to you?
That's all. That's what he said, yeah, he shot her.
You say how he did it, or?
He just shot her. Right in the head.
The 2 men then met Macris and his mother at the Home Depot on Lemon Avenue to pick up doors. From there, Macris and his mother traveled in his work truck, while Trevino and Veleda followed in the black Lincoln belonging to Trevino's girlfriend. The group then went to another Home Depot on Forest Avenue to purchase a microwave. At this location, Trevino paid Veleda $1,000 for his role as the driver. After this, the group separated. Later, Macris received a call from the school informing him that no one had come to pick up Maria. Macris and his mother then went to collect Maria from school. After this, Macris received a call telling him to return home. In response, Macris contacted Laura's best friend, who was to be the matron of honor at their wedding, asking her to take care of the children. She complied, collecting and caring for the children during the events. On June 2, 2016, Macris was arrested and charged with the murder of Laura. This arrest connected the evidence gathered during the investigation. Veleda, one of the accomplices, was offered a plea deal in exchange for his testimony against Macris and Trevino. As a result of his cooperation, Veleda received a 25-year sentence. The investigation revealed that the motive for the murder stemmed from Laura's email to Macris expressing her desire to end their relationship. Macris, unwilling to lose custody of his daughter Maria, took drastic measures. Detective Sawyer said, "We felt like this was the reason why Laura was murdered, because she wanted out the relationship, and John did not want to lose her or the children as a result." A shocking fact is that just 20 minutes after receiving Laura's email, Macris forwarded it to Trevino. This awful plan had been a long time in the making. The entire time, Macris's marriage proposal was a ruse designed to keep her in the relationship long enough for him to execute his plan. investigators believed that Macris's participation in the Citizens Police Academy had familiarized him with law enforcement procedures. This knowledge led him to believe he could outsmart the police and evade justice for his crime. But Macris's assumption was wrong. The thorough investigation and the evidence collected led to his conviction. Macris was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole for his role in orchestrating Laura's murder. Trevino, the individual who carried out the actual killing, was also found guilty for his part in the crime. Like Macris, Trevino received a sentence of life imprisonment without the possibility of parole. Do you think Laura should have received more encouragement to leave Macris after the email? Why do you think red flags in abusive relationships are often ignored? And do you think the police were at fault for not following up on Lorena's report?
Hi, Rach. It's only me. I just got a call from Helen in Montessori. She said you haven't picked up Adam. Was Sarah meant to pick him up or something? Give us a shout with him. Rach, this is Joe. I tried your number now. I don't know how many times. You're not Jackie's. You're not your mother's. I'm now really, really, really worried about you. Please call me. Please call. It isn't funny. This is like you. Like you. Rach, it's me again. Please ring. I've been crying. You have me worried. I don't know. Please talk to me. Please.
Hi everyone, and welcome back to my channel. Today we're going to be taking a look at another twisted case with you. A well-respected woman in their close-knit community, 30-year-old mom of two Rachel O'Reilly, was mysteriously found dead in her house in 2004 after failing to pick up her son from school. Our love and respect goes out to all those who knew and loved Rachel O'Reilly, and all those affected by this case. Rachel O'Reilly was born on October 10, 1973, to a young Teresa Lowe, just 17 at the time. Teresa, feeling too young to raise a child, made the heart-wrenching decision to give Rachel up for adoption. Rachel was taken in by Rose Calloway, who welcomed her into a warm and cozy home that eventually included 5 adopted siblings. The Calloway family was incredibly close-knit, and they always made time for each other. Rachel had 3 brothers, Anthony, Declan, and Paul, and a sister named Anne. She was an athletic girl, full of energy, and was also known for her love of softball. Described as a live wire with a kind heart, Rachel was a bright ray of sunshine in her family. Rose fondly remembered her as an adventurous child who threw herself into everything she could, while her father, Jim, praised her independence and love for decorating. At 17, Rachel met Joe O'Reilly at the department store where they both worked. Joe was 2 years older and was surprised by Rachel's height. She stood at 5'11", just a few inches shorter than his 6'5" frame. Despite Joe's repeated attempts to ask her out, Rachel initially turned him down, but Joe kept trying and trying. Joe, eager to win Rachel over, found out she played softball and one day turned up at her practice session and joined her team. Both of them excelled and even had the potential to turn professional. Their bond soon grew into a romantic relationship. At the top of the Eiffel Tower in Paris, Joe proposed to Rachel, and a couple of years later, they got married. They welcomed 2 sons and moved to their new home, a bungalow called Lambe View in Knoll in 2003. It was the perfect place to raise their children, and Rachel loved being a mother and dedicated everything she did to her boys. Joe O'Reilly also came from a close family as the second eldest of 2 boys and 2 girls. But his childhood was different. His parents' marriage fell apart when he was young, and his father moved to England. Despite this, Joe was incredibly confident and determined to succeed in the advertising industry. Although he did not have the formal qualifications, his persuasive nature and confidence with clients made up for it. He was known for getting to work early and leaving late, all for success. When Rachel and Joe moved into their 3-bedroom bungalow, Rachel's stepmother Rose had some concerns. She worried that Rachel might feel lonely, as Joe's work kept him away from home so often. Despite this, Rachel seemed happy with the move. She quickly became well known in the area, selling Avon and Tupperware. On Monday, October 4th, 2004, around 5:30 a.m., Joe O'Reilly left the family home to go to work at Viacom Outdoor Advertising in the Bluebell Industrial Estate, where he was an account manager. Later that morning, Joe sent Rachel a message saying, "You and the boys sleep okay? Wish Jackie a happy birthday for me, please. Kiss, kiss." But he received no reply. Between 11:52 a.m. and 1:45 p.m., Joe left Rachel several voicemails. At 1:15 p.m., Joe got a call from their son's daycare, which told him that Rachel did not pick up their son at 12:30 as usual. Concerned, Joe called Rachel's phone and left a message, asking if someone else was supposed to pick up their son. He called again at 1:24, telling her he was worried and asking her to call him back, but still received no response.
He began ringing Rachel. She didn't answer the phone. He rang her mother.
And he said he was just wondering, had we heard from Rachel that he hadn't? I said, God, that's very odd, I said, because if there was any problem at all, she definitely would have rang me. And I said, I'll go out now.
Joe set off to get their sons and called his mother-in-law, Rose, explaining that he hadn't heard from Rachel all morning and that both the home phone and her mobile were unanswered. He asked Rose to go to their home to check on Rachel. As he drove down the motorway, Joe called Rachel's phone again, telling her he had spoken to Rose, who also hadn't heard from her, and begged her to call him back. Joe then phoned Rachel's youngest brother, Anthony, to tell him that he hadn't heard from Rachel and that she had missed picking up their son from daycare. Family members tried calling Rachel's home phone and mobile, but all the calls went unanswered. Rose had a feeling that something was seriously wrong. This was not like Rachel, so she set off to check on her daughter. When she pulled up at the bungalow, she felt a brief sense of relief upon seeing Rachel's car in the driveway and the patio door open. But the house was eerily silent. The kitchen drawers were open and items were scattered across the floor. In the living room, videos were dumped in a pile, making it look like the house had been robbed.
The door was wide open, it was just right back. And I walked into the kitchen and the drawers of the unit had been emptied out onto the floor. And I started to get a bit uneasy.
When Rose reached Rachel and Joe's bedroom, she found her daughter's lifeless body. Rachel was lying on her back in a pool of blood, the upper half of her body twisted. There was so much blood that Rose couldn't tell if Rachel's face was on its side or face down. Blood covered the walls and ceiling, and there was even blood spatter in the bathroom. When Rose touched her, she felt Rachel was as cold as marble. A neighbor later recalled hearing Rose's screams. Rose ran to her bag to get her phone and called the Gardaí, the Irish police. She then called one of her sons, Declan, to tell him the news. Declan said he was coming home, and so was Jim, Rose's husband. Joe arrived at the house at 2:30 with the children and was informed about what happened. Joe ran into the house shouting Rachel's name. Rachel's best friend Jackie, who was a nurse, also came to the house. She checked Rachel and confirmed there was no pulse and she wasn't breathing. Rachel's father, Jim, soon arrived, but was told by a Garda not to go inside due to the horrifying scene. When the first Garda arrived, Joe approached them in the garden. He explained that he had been in the house and touched Rachel's body to check for a pulse. Anne mentioned that Joe had moved a box near where Rachel's body lay into the boys' room and was worried that he might have destroyed evidence. Joe told the Gardaí he had an alibi. He had been at a bus depot in Broadstone. It seemed unlikely he could have traveled all the way to the house and back in the given time frame. Rachel's father, Jim, said that Rachel would have fought for her life with everything she had. He believed the killer attacked her from behind. Although it didn't initially appear to be a robbery gone wrong, one thing stood out immediately. There was money in the home that hadn't been taken. 800 euros in a box in the kitchen and 400 euros in Rachel's bag. The police didn't believe this was a random attack carried out by a stranger. The brutality of the assault indicated a deep hatred. Whoever did it, they planned all of it way before.
I made my way outside. The superintendent said to me, "What did you see in there?" I said, "I saw two things." And he said, "What?" I said, "Firstly, it wasn't a burglary." "Correct," he said. And he says, "What's the second thing?" Well, I said, "Whoever done this to this lady hated her." I said, "There's a hate and a viciousness in what I seen down there." He says, "Correct."
An incident room was set up at the station, and over 40 officers were dispatched to do door-to-door questioning and search the local area for potential clues. Based on the crime scene, the Gardaí believed Rachel had been caught totally off guard by the attack. Searches for the murder weapon were conducted, but nothing was found. Instead, the searchers discovered something more interesting. Half a mile away from the house, a plastic bag was found containing jewelry and a camera, two items Joe had said were missing. At that point, it was looking less and less like a burglary. That evening, Joe was questioned. He said he left for work as usual and headed to the gym beforehand. CCTV footage showed him leaving work at 8 a.m., walking towards a bus depot in Broadstone where his colleague was supposed to meet him. Part of Joe's job was checking advertisements on buses, which meant he had to travel around quite often. At 8:45 a.m., Derek set off and called Joe upon arriving at the depot, asking where he was. Joe replied he was in another part of the depot. Derek confirmed he had spoken to Joe on the phone when he arrived, and Joe had said he was there, just in a different part of the site. At the time Derek had that call, he didn't know Rachel had been murdered.
Gardaí carrying out a preliminary investigation outside the house where the remains of a mother of two were found this afternoon. State pathologist Dr. Mary Cassidy was called to the scene after the discovery.
During the questioning, the police asked Joe if anyone was known to dislike Rachel or if she had been seeing someone else romantically. In response, Joe said none of them were having an affair. But the Gardaí hadn't asked if Joe was having an affair, so why did Joe feel the need to clarify that he wasn't? This odd statement raised suspicions, and soon the truth came out. Joe himself was having an affair. He eventually admitted he had a brief fling with a woman named Nikki, insisting it wasn't serious. He mentioned that he had told Rachel 3 times that he wasn't having an affair. The couple had argued the day before she was killed, and Joe had slept in the spare room. The day after Rachel was found, Nikki was questioned by the police and confirmed the relationship, but also claimed it wasn't serious. That same day, the Gardaí received Rachel's post-mortem results. It revealed she had been bludgeoned with a heavy object, such as a dumbbell, which was one of the items Joe had reported missing from their home. Rachel's skull was broken in 2 places, and her face, shoulders, and neck had multiple lacerations. Defensive wounds on her arms indicated she had attempted to fight off her attacker. She had been hit between 6 and 9 times, and blood in her airways suggested she had struggled to breathe.
There's nothing specific enough about the injuries to identify an actual weapon. All I could say was it was something fairly heavy to cause the damage to the skull. Certainly something like a dumbbell, anything that is heavy enough and wielded with enough force. The force that they have to use to produce those injuries is pretty enormous.
A couple of days after the murder, the police searched Joe's office and seized his laptop. This deepened the investigation, as every clue pointed away from a random burglary and towards a more personal, violent attack. A series of deleted emails were recovered by the police, revealing Joe's deep hatred for Rachel. In conversations with his sister Anne, Joe used vulgar language and curse words to refer to Rachel, even saying she repulsed him. When these emails came to light, Rachel's family was devastated. At family gatherings, Joe would tend to separate himself from the adults, and nobody really knew much about him. But this was the last thing they expected. The house was then cordoned off for 9 days. While the investigation continued, the family prepared for Rachel's burial. They decided to write letters to be placed in the coffin with her. Following the burial, Rachel's parents received the cards attached to the flowers, and one card stood out. Joe's card simply said, "See you later." Joe's behavior continued to raise eyebrows. The police told him he could now return to the house and make a note of anything he thought had been stolen. He repeated that some of Rachel's jewelry, a camera, and 2 towels were missing, along with one of the dumbbells. But the jewelry and camera had already been found. Despite the house still being in disarray with Rachel's blood everywhere, Joe invited Rose and Jim over, saying there was a sense of peace and that it would be good for them to visit. Rose was hesitant, but Jim thought that if it helped Joe process what had happened, maybe it could help them too. To their shock, when they arrived, the house remained a crime scene with visible bloodstains and overall chaos. Joe's insistence on bringing them back to such a setting, where their daughter had been brutally murdered, only made them feel more and more suspicious. Joe began reenacting the murder and speculating on how Rachel had been killed, even pointing to the blood spatter on the ceiling. He showed them the blood on the walls, adding that he thought the killer had stepped over her body and then cleaned up in the bathroom while listening to Rachel choke on her own blood, and that the killer had gone back into the room to finish her off. When they went back downstairs, Joe insisted that they listen to the voicemails he had left for her that day. Rose later said she could hear Rachel's voice in her head saying, "He did it." That night, Rose spoke to Jim about her feelings. Jim was distraught and asked her not to talk to anyone else, saying people reacted to grief in different ways and that Joe was just behaving as if he were in shock. Rose couldn't speak to Jim about it again because he would get so upset. Joe also started speaking to the media, claiming the family was worried that the killer could attack again. He even went on television to ask for information and address directly to the killer.
I would appeal to anybody that knows anything at all that they might even think unimportant, if they could rack their brains.
What we can gather was that has been taken so far doesn't just, not that anything can justify that what happened, but it just doesn't justify the violence and the excess of what happened. It just doesn't fit. Why kill her? You know, we feel because she could identify that person. So it's quite possible that this is someone she knew, this is someone we knew. Somebody somewhere has to have seen something.
A journalist interviewed Joe at the house, and before long, he asked her if she wanted to see the bedroom where Rachel had been murdered. This took her by surprise, and when he pointed out where the blood had been and where she was found, it left her deeply nervous.
He suddenly asked us if we would like to see where it happened. Now, I was still at the beginning of my career. I wasn't sure, what he was offering or asking us. I kind of, I suppose I stalled a little and kind of said, bring us down to the bedroom? And he went, yeah, I can bring you down to the bedroom, show you where it happened.
Another journalist visited the house 12 days after the murder and took photographs, including one of Joe sitting in his kitchen. Joe mentioned that the Gardaí were treating him as a suspect. When the journalist asked if he believed he was a suspect, Joe said yes.
The situation you both found in the house, did you get the sense that she'd been taken unawares, that this was someone that perhaps she trusted?
Yeah, I think so. Where the murder happened was in the bedroom, which is the very last room of the house. So it's the room where you're least likely to bring someone you don't know because you're cornered. My view as well would be, and again, it's just my view, it's not a police theory, it's just my own personal belief, is that she knew the person, because why else would you kill her? If it's a violent robbery, why go to the extreme of murdering the person unless they can identify you? And that's why we've talked about this and practically nothing else for the last 3 weeks. We just feel it's someone she would have known or someone she could have identified.
People from the community and the couple's friendship circles called Joe to offer their condolences and asked if there was anything they could do to help. Joe would offer to show them the crime scene and explain what he thought had happened, something later referred to as the murder tours. In another interview, Joe claimed he had to meet a client that evening, but this turned out to be a lie. He instead went and visited his lover, Nikki. He was on TV asking for information about the murder of his wife, and he spent the night with the woman he had been having an affair with. When news of the affair broke in the media, interest in the case only increased. One journalist noted that Looking back over her interview notes, Joe hadn't actually mentioned loving his wife or how much he misses her. He spoke about how devastated the children were, but said nothing about his own feelings. Despite Joe and Nikki's efforts to downplay their relationship, it was becoming clear that this had been a long-term affair lasting several months. They had met while working at an advertising agency, and after a night out at a pub, they swapped email addresses and mobile phone numbers to keep in contact. Joe would tell Rachel he was away for work when he was actually going to see Nikki. They spoke on the phone every day and would meet each other 2 times a week, all while Joe firmly denied everything. In December 2005, 14 months after Rachel's murder, the Gardaí were still working to build their case against Joe O'Reilly. At that point, everyone knew it was Joe. They just needed to find the right evidence to pin him. One crucial piece of evidence was the analysis of Joe's phone location data, which showed that his phone was pinging off a mast near his home around the time of the murder. Rachel's exhumation on March 8, 2005, also revealed something very suspicious. Joe O'Reilly had placed a letter into Rachel's coffin during her burial, which led her family to ask the police to examine it as they suspected that Joe might have written something incriminating. The note simply said, "I am sorry." But this note was considered ambiguous and not sufficient on its own. The exhumation of Rachel's body also revealed a 5-page letter Joe had written, which was chemically treated and examined using infrared technology. In one passage, Joe expressed deep love and regret, saying, "Rachel, I love you so very, very much. I cannot think what I will ever do without you, and I don't want to think. You were the best thing that ever happened to me, and you will never be replaced. This is the hardest letter I've ever had to write for reasons only we know. Rachel, please forgive me. 2 words, 1 sentence, but I will say them forever." As the Gardaí were searching through CCTV footage, they came across a car. The car was similar to Joe's blue Fiat Punto, but the license plate was not clear enough for identification. To establish that it was indeed Joe's car on the footage, Gardaí conducted a search of all Fiat Punto drivers in Ireland, which resulted in 2,500 matches. While they couldn't eliminate every driver, they ruled out enough to strongly suggest the car belonged to Joe. The police also contacted O2 for call records, hoping to corroborate Joe's movements on the day of Rachel's murder. Although they couldn't provide specific call recordings, an engineer from France helped trace Joe's phone activity. They pinpointed which cell towers Joe's phone had accessed throughout the day, which allowed them to map his entire route. It was revealed that at 5:45 a.m. on the morning of the murder, Joe left home to go to a gym on the city outskirts where he was supposed to meet his colleague. On his way to a petrol station, he filled up his car and received a 28-minute call from Nikki, which was the first of 8 calls they exchanged that day. Despite Joe's claim that he was at Broadstone all morning, his phone's data showed it had pinged off a mast near Murphy's Quarry, which was less than a mile away from his home. Joe had also sent an email to his colleague saying his phone would be out of service for most of the morning, which contradicted his earlier statements. On the morning of the murder, CCTV footage caught Rachel leaving with their 2 sons around 9 a.m. to drop them off at daycare and school. 3 minutes later, she passed by Murphy's Quarry in her car. She returned home at 9:41 a.m., and shortly thereafter, it's believed she was killed. The car believed to be Joe's was also seen on CCTV passing Murphy's Quarry around the times relevant to Rachel's movements. Tons of evidence pointing towards Joe O'Reilly's involvement in Rachel's murder finally led to his arrest in October 2006.
Joe O'Reilly arriving at Swords District Court earlier today. The 35-year-old had been arrested this morning at a house in Dunleer, County Louth, and brought to Balbriggan Garda Station. Detective Sergeant Pat Marry told the court that at 10:55 a.m. he formally charged Mr. O'Reilly with the murder of his wife, Rachel O'Reilly, on October 4th, 2004 at the Knoll in County Dublin.
Gardaí recalled Joe reacting with shock when informed of his arrest at his mother's house. He was formally charged with Rachel's murder that day and entered a plea of not guilty. The trial began on June 25, 2007, drawing a huge amount of media and public interest across Ireland. And on July 21, 2007, after 9.5 hours of deliberation, the jury returned with a unanimous verdict of guilty. Despite overwhelming evidence, including forensic analysis and witness testimonies, he has never admitted to the crime. The emotional scenes outside the court were described as some of the most extraordinary ever witnessed there. The courtroom erupted with cheers and applause upon the verdict. Joe O'Reilly was sentenced to life imprisonment for Rachel's murder, which marked the beginning of his incarceration at Mountjoy Prison. Rachel's family, who had gone through a long and painful journey seeking justice for their daughter, expressed heartfelt thanks to the Gardaí, the prosecution team, and the people of Ireland who supported them with cards, letters, and prayers throughout the ordeal. For them, the verdict brought a sense of closure and justice for Rachel. Joe O'Reilly has been denied parole on multiple occasions, and Rachel's family is making sure that he serves his life sentence. Currently incarcerated at Midlands Prison in Portlaoise since 2002, after spending the first 15 years of his sentence at Dublin's Wheatfield Prison, O'Reilly has continuously sought to appeal his conviction without success. His attempts to overturn the verdict have been consistently denied by the courts. Do you think that justice was served? Why do you think Joe denies it all to this day? Share your thoughts in the comments below. If you want more videos like this, please consider dropping a like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell so you don't miss out on more true crime videos. Take care and see you in the next one.